I want to go back. He wants to go back. I want to go back to the farm, far away from home, with a milk pail on my arm. I miss the rooster, the one that used to wake me up at 4 a.m. down on the farm.
Today we'd like to show you our garden for 2020 and how we got here. You can see that Scott has built, we have 3 raised beds in our backyard, built from ordinary lumber. Scott sealed them with a safe sealing mixture so we didn't have to use treated wood. And this year we experimented with some seeds that we had saved from last year's harvest. It's not hard to do. We had a wonderful variety of tomatoes last year that we felt were probably the best tomatoes we had ever grown in our 40-some years of marriage. So we decided to try and save the seeds from those tomatoes and see if we could replicate the crops. Now we know that one of them was a hybrid, so we're not sure how those are going to turn out, but it's a fun experiment nonetheless. So to save seeds from your harvest or things you've purchased at the farmer's market, it's very simple, really. For tomatoes, of course, you have to slice open the tomato and get into the gelatinous interior where you'll find the seeds encased in kind of a slimy substance. We just spread those out, let them dry a little bit, tried to wash off as much of that slimy substance as we could, and then let them thoroughly dry, and we ended up with a mat of seeds like this, which we simply broke apart when it was time for starting our seeds indoors. So we had done this for several kinds of plants: tomatoes, chili peppers, the snap peas that we grew, a particularly nice squash that we liked from the grocery store, and we also used some russet potatoes to try to get some potato seedlings that we could plant. So around the beginning of April this year, we started our seeds indoors. We bought some pots that you can buy at the nursery for starting seedlings, and we also saved some containers, tofu containers, yogurt containers, that sort of thing. We used seed starting mix rather than potting soil or topsoil. It's especially formulated to make the germination process easier. Topsoil can be a little bit heavy for using for germinating seeds. But anyway, we took our saved seeds and potted them up. We have a wonderful south-facing window where we just leave them on a tray. And then around our frost date here is mid-May. So we usually wait till the 3rd week of May before putting anything out. And you can see here all of the tomato plants in this bed are ones that we had started from saved seeds last year. So we're very, very excited to see what kind of harvest we get from these tomatoes. Another thing that we tried new this year in Scott's raised beds, we had installed these cattle fencing panels in order to give us a support for putting some critter deterrent netting around. Last year we found that we think it was the bunny rabbits and perhaps the deer, but many of our tender seedlings were apparently enjoyed at a midnight buffet by some of our critters, particularly the beet seedlings that we had started last year. So we didn't get any beets last year. To prevent that, we found this plastic poultry netting at one of our farm supply stores nearby, and it's perfect size. One piece wraps completely around the garden and keeps out all but the most determined creatures. So instead of trying to do staking for our tomatoes this year, we thought we would try a twine trellis setup. So we've strung several layers of baling twine across between the 2 vertical sides of the cattle fence panel, and we're hoping we can kind of train the tomatoes to grow up between this twine support that we've created. Last year we just tried tying them up, and it was only moderately successful. Our tomatoes turned into a sprawling mess. I do need to go through this year and snap off some of the side suckers on our tomato plants so that we get a strong upright growth instead of a bush configuration, and I will be doing that later today. So in this bed we have tomatoes and also a couple of the transplanted potatoes that we sprouted from purchased russet potatoes just from the grocery store. We were able to get them to sprout from some of the eyes that we cut apart. Reading on the internet, we discovered that potatoes need to grow in mounded soil, so we're going to be continuing to mound the soil around our potato plants as the season progresses. In the middle bed, we have a volunteer potato plant that came up. We used to throw some of our kitchen scraps in the bed in the wintertime, using it as kind of a compost bin before we built our compost bin. And this one just came up as a volunteer, so we decided to leave it and see what we can harvest from that. That's why it's so much farther along than our potatoes that we started indoors. We also have some pea plants that we started from harvested seed in the corners, and again we're going to train them up the twine supports. We have a couple of tomato plants in here that we moved into this bed, and we have a squash that we were able to start from purchased delicata squash from the grocery store. In our third raised bed, we have 2 more squash plants, volunteer onions. I have 4 rows, of beets that were seeded directly into the soil this year. And I think the protective netting is working because they did not get this far last year before being eaten. And then we have a row of green beans. The old farmer is not fond of green beans, but his little dog Mimi loves them, so we're probably growing those green beans for our dog. But we're still excited to see what kind of harvest we get on our green beans. The previous owners had left this water tank here. They had it out in the middle of the yard for watering and attracting deer. We decided to use it for another raised bed garden. I'm kind of putting my herbs in this garden because I don't want them to take over. They'll spread forever if you don't contain them a little bit. So here we have some beautiful oregano. So this is behaving like a perennial in this bed. This was planted last year, and this is how it came up this year. We had planted some garlic in this bed in a previous year, and we have some garlic coming up. I've also added a sage plant. We have some lettuce that's coming up. Again, a volunteer. I've added some basil this year and put a couple of tomato plants in here to see how well they'll do in this bed. We tried doing some carrots, and I think number one, we were concerned this bed wasn't deep enough to produce carrots, and number two, rabbits apparently like the little carrot greens before they're even old enough to survive, so those are not going to be successful this year. The lettuce that you see in the ground is all volunteer from some plants we had last year. Apparently the lettuce seed blew all over the place, and this is great. We just come out in the evening before dinner and harvest our fresh lettuce leaves to have with dinner every night. Harvesting the lettuce leaves acts kind of like pruning and just encourages further growth. I also have a pot of chives that I don't do anything particular with. It just comes back every year. And I've started inserting some flowers, perennial flowers, to fill in this area. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the system that we use to keep track of our gardening efforts. We bought an inexpensive journal at an office supplies store, and we try to remember to take notes every year. And it's just very simple, not complicated at all. We just basically mark down the dates that we do anything significant, such as the dates that we started our plants, what types of seeds we're using, then notes on the day the seedlings first appear, and so on. This does help in future years when deciding when it's time to do various things, and also if you have a particularly successful harvest, it's good to remember what types of seeds that you planted, and you might want to get the same kinds of seeds again. In addition to keeping a journal, we use all kinds of repurposed containers for storing our harvested seeds. This, of course, is obviously a mason jar. These seeds are larger. These are the seeds that we managed to save from one delicata squash that we bought at the grocery. You can see it's a fantastic number of seeds. Be enough to feed a family of 50 for a year. Also saved, and these little discarded pill containers are useful for this, for seed saving. These are the seeds we saved from our sugar snap peas. Again, something that our dog really loves, and we do too. Just again, when you're harvesting, make sure they're really well dried out before you package them up, or you'll end up with moldy seeds. Thank you for taking the time to tour our vegetable garden. We're also working on adding some flowers to our property, and we can take that tour another time. But again, thank you from the Old Farmer and Mrs. Old Farmer.
I'm Kelly from Armed and Feminine. Thanks to all of my friends here. Give us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, give us a comment too. My friends want to know what you like. Remember, it's your life.
Protect it!